Once again, the SEC and the Big Ten want college football to exist without the Big 12. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. On today's program, let's talk about it. The SEC and the Big Ten have made a pitch that the college football playoff should give 4 automatic bids to each of those leagues instead of just one, and effectively leave the Big 12 and the ACC to fend for itself. We'll also go through how right now I think the college football playoff could have 2 Big 12 teams in it at the end of the year still. It's not out of the question. And we'll end the show talking Texas Tech. Are they sneakily now a conference title contender? If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. This has been going on. I have discussed this for well over a year. The SEC and the Big Ten are slowly inching toward college football existing without the Big 12, without the ACC, and with 2 teams in a super conference. Now, don't get me wrong. When Georgia plays Alabama, when Georgia plays Ohio State, when Michigan plays Penn State, more eyeballs go on that game than Utah and Oklahoma State. I get that. I understand how the Big 12 is at a viewership disadvantage, and how when you're at a viewership disadvantage, you are ultimately at a money disadvantage. You're at a brand disadvantage. However, I can promise you this. When we get 10 years down the road, this isn't the NFL. There aren't 32 teams. There are 133 or 134 FBS schools. When you get 10 years down the road and you've isolated your product to the same thing year in and year out, the same Georgia, Alabama, the same Georgia, Ohio State, the same Georgia, Michigan, at that point, when you have lacked parity altogether, you have killed college football. In the NFL, the Panthers can go beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. You go, well, the Jags have some pieces to be a legitimate squad and the Panthers don't. However, in that league, there's parity enough to keep interest. If you oversaturate college football with just matchups of juggernauts that end with, the number 6 team beat the number 5 team, you do not ultimately grow fans. And what I think most people don't understand, and this is me, before I even get into this report from On3 Sports, this is me just giving you an editorialization about what the future of college football is if the Big Ten and the SEC have their Super League 2 conference. See you all later. We're going to play our own college football playoff, which the commissioner of the NCAA, the president, I should say, of the NCAA, seems to be kind of in for, kind of gung-ho for. Charlie Baker has laid out in the offseason how these 2 leagues could ultimately make their own rules and kind of do their own stuff and pay their players $22 million a year. And what I'm telling you is we get down the line where it just isn't fun anymore. And one of the best takes that I've seen on all of this is that if you continue down this path, John Stork says this, the train has left the station, unfortunately. The execs just assume every other school's fans will pick one of the big boys to adopt as their new team. It's not like the NFL. You're compartmentalized to 32 squads. In college football, if you tally together the amount of Purdue, Indiana, Texas Tech, and Utah fans, you have far more than the scope that Penn State has. Well, yeah, we've combined 4 schools. Of course, there would be more fans than what just Penn State has. Well, guess what? If Penn State is the only one that's allowed to compete in college football, that's allowed to compete for a national championship, are the fans of the other 4 schools all of a sudden going to say, well, guess I'm not a Utah fan? Well, I guess I got to find a new team. I guess Penn State it is. No, you cannot change the landscape of college football to create at the very top a competitive level of fandom, a competitive level of exposure when you isolate and ignore not just history, but human beings. Fan bases that make up everybody else in the country. And now On3 Sports reports that the Big Ten and the SEC want to make a motion where each of these leagues gets 4 automatic bids. And at that point, you get 1 Big 12 team. I'm going to make the case in the middle segment of today's show that the Big 12 can get 2 teams this year, 3 teams even This year, no doubt, it's still on the table. Moving forward, it's even more on the table in future. And you're like, oh, no, they couldn't. The SEC can. Yeah. Anybody can. It's somebody's going to. It's reasonable that it will happen. And it's shocking to me that we have to have this conversation again about how these two leagues want to cannibalize college football. Here's the quote from Heather Dinich. Sources in both leagues told ESPN on Monday they would prefer to have potentially 4 automatic bids each to the playoff when the next contract begins in 2026, which is next year. CFP leaders haven't playoff will look like beyond this season and next. Said they need to know before making any decisions about future scheduling partnerships. Luckily, that kind of addendum is in there. He said, hey, we're not going to move forward completely with this because guess what? We haven't seen the current college football playoff format once. Not at all. It hasn't existed yet. It hasn't been a thing. We haven't watched 12 teams square off. Oh, yeah. Home, road. How does that format work? We don't know. We're still exploring that. And already these two leagues want 8 teams on 3 continues. The Big Ten and SEC could have a stronghold in the CFP if this goes through, obviously. Some officials reportedly expressed interest in limiting the role of the 13-member selection committee or even eliminating it entirely. Great. Let's go back to the BCS. Let's go back to the computer. And honestly, one of the quotes in here talks about subjectivity. That the Big Ten and the SEC want to eliminate subjectivity in these conversations. What? Brother, I don't know if you've Googled college football playoff odds, chances, any of that. It's a lot of SEC and Big Ten teams. And those are the odds today. The Big 12 can change that. That's why I'm still a proponent of not giving them 8 automatic bids. But if you Google those odds, subjectivity is certainly not hurting these two conferences and never does with that committee. They don't ever leave out the money, the exposure, the help of the SEC, the help of the Big Ten. That I can assure you. You're going to be okay on that front. That's it. They again, want to marginalize the Big 12. And it's just not going to grow college football. It's ultimately, in 10 years, 15, 20 years, going to stunt what this game is and what it can grow to be. How many times do I have to get on a soapbox? I know I'm pro Big 12. The name of the show is Locked On Big 12. I am also very pro college football. And not even a tradition. I get it. Expansion's great in that we have Utah now, and I love having Utah now. But this, too far. Too far. And completely unreasonable. Coming up, the Big 12 can get 2 teams in the college football playoff. Here's how. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Folks, today's show is brought to you by Roy. What I love about Roy is that you can pick any college football player, a la Taj Brooks. That's my Roy Player of the Week. Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. Download Roy for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On. You'll be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. This week, we've selected Taj Brooks, and I'm giving Taj Brooks $100 on Roy. For what I make in this podcast, that goes to Taj Brooks. If you were impressed as we were with his performance every week, you can show him love too. Hop on Roy and throw in a few bucks. If everyone pitches in $10, that adds up fast for Taj Brooks. Now, you have the chance to show your appreciation to Brooks and his standout performance every week, as well as what he'll continue to bring Texas Tech. Get off the sidelines, into the NIL game with Roy, and support players. Change the game with Roy. Give Taj Brooks a couple bucks. Visit Roy, download the app for iOS. Do it today. I think the Big 12 can get 2 teams in the college football playoff. There's an avenue for 3. What? No, there's not. There's no way. Hold. There is. And as many college football playoff teams as we have both in and even on the brink. I watched today a short from ESPN about teams that are on the bubble for the college football playoff. And I remembered, that's right. We have the bubble now for the college football playoff. One of those teams was BYU. Another one of those teams was Kansas State. Iowa State is who on 3 has in their college football playoff, and ESPN is split between BYU and Iowa State. What if that's the case? Let's go through it. Let's go through a best case scenario. Now, I still think, based on the way that everything shakes out schedule-wise, that BYU is still the Big 12's hope for the college football playoff at the very top. Iowa State, sure, you're in that conversation. I think BYU might have a bit easier of a schedule moving forward. I know they have Utah. Let me explain. For BYU, here's where I projected them preseason: 6-6, 3-6 in Big 12 play, 11th overall. Boy, they have really exceeded those expectations. I had them starting 4-1. They're 5-0. Arizona at home, that's a win. Oklahoma State at home, you're favored in that game. That's a win. UCF on the road. At that point, BYU is a top 15 program, maybe at number 10 in the country when they travel to Orlando. Will they be favored, especially after what Colorado just did? It's likely. Again, we're talking best case scenario. I'm going to give BYU a win there. If, again, we are trying to talk about the Big 12's chances at the college football playoff, we want BYU to beat Utah when they square off at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Why? Because we don't know about Utah yet. Who's your quarterback? Is it Cam Rising? Is it Isaac Wilson? I don't know. And as long as I don't know, let's say, again, talking best case scenario, that's a win. Kansas, win. Arizona State, win. Houston, win. Do I think BYU goes 12-0? That's going to be tough. There's like a 1% chance of that happening per all the analytics that I've Googled. However, if we want multiple teams in the college football playoff, here's how we do it. BYU goes 12-0 undefeated. This is a dream scenario. I get that, but that's why we're gonna play it out. You're gonna bear with me. Who are the other 2 schools that have the best shot at going to the Big 12 championship or going to the college football playoff? Kansas State and Iowa State. For Kansas State this season, they've got Colorado on the road, West Virginia on the road, Kansas at home, at Houston, Arizona State, Cincinnati, at Iowa State. Here's what we need. This is my preseason projection, was 10-2 for Kansas State. If they are able, following that loss to BYU, to beat Oklahoma State, Colorado, West Virginia, Kansas, Houston, Arizona State, Cincinnati, and then lose to, that would win Iowa State. So again, I'm painting you the picture of BYU goes 12-0. Kansas State, who already played BYU, goes 11-1. We now have 2 top 12 programs. BYU at 12-0 is number 4 in the country, number 5 in the country. Kansas State at 11-1 is number 6 in the country, number 7 in the country. Then they square off in the Big 12 championship game. And guess what happens? BYU loses to Kansas State, 12-1, 2 teams are in. But that's good. That's good. I'm not an insane person, right? Someone tell me I'm not an insane person. Iowa State, the rest of the way. I predicted them at 9-3. I've so far been on the money with Iowa State, having them at 4-0. The Baylor game, you're favored. West Virginia on the road, you're probably favored. Let's say they start 6-0. Then they beat UCF. Then they beat Texas Tech. Then they beat Kansas. I mean, that UCF and Texas Tech, those are home games. Like, I'm not worried about Iowa State being in a position at 8-0 in the top 15, in the top 10 come week 9 or 10, whatever it might be. Then Kansas, that's certainly winnable, much more so than I thought preseason. Cincinnati, no doubt. Utah on the road, then Kansas State at home. If Iowa State goes undefeated, let's say they do beat Kansas State, as I had them projected in the preseason, and BYU also goes undefeated, carry the 1, carry the 2. That's 2 12-0 teams. And no matter what happens in the Big 12 championship at that point, your winner goes to the college football playoff as a lock, and your loser goes to the college football playoff at 12-1. Wait a second. What about this? And now we're really getting into absurdity. BYU goes 12-0, which I know BYU fans hate. They're all like, oh, the wheels are going to fall off at some point. Don't put that evil on us. We're not confident yet. BYU goes 12-0. Then our friends at Kansas State, they finish with the record of 11-1. Like, their only loss being BYU. They beat Iowa State at the end of the year. Then Iowa State, who are also our friends, their only loss at the end of the year ends up being Kansas State. Again, I'm showing you projections where I had these 2 teams preseason, these 3 teams preseason. That would mean, follow me, BYU 12-0, Kansas State 11-1, Iowa State 11-1. The winner of Iowa State, Kansas State, which in this scenario, the Wildcats, would go to the Big 12 championship. Kansas State beats BYU. For the greater good of this conference, And I know we have so much football left, but I'm painting you a picture of mass chaos where our league is at the prominent forefront of college football. And in that scenario, it is BYU 12-1, Kansas State 12-1, conference champions. Lock, you're in. BYU at 12-1. Lock, you're in. Congrats on your 6th seed in the college football playoff. And then here they come. The Iowa State Cyclones at 11-1, number 10 in the country. Like, yeah, Missouri's 9-3. Yeah, Ole Miss is 9-3. Can we put them over 11-1 Iowa State? Probably not. Iowa State at 11-1, the number 10 spot in the nation, college football playoff. So I enter the segment telling you the Big 12 can get 2 teams in the college football playoff. And then I tell you, hey, wait a second, there's an avenue in which 3 teams get in. And better yet, there's a way where we add Colorado into this. There's a way we add Texas Tech into this. There's still a way we add UCF or Arizona into this conversation. You can kind of plug and play with any one-loss Big 12 team at this point and say, yeah, based on the fact that your conference champion gets in, we've got a real shot to have multiple teams representing this league in the college football playoff. And with that being the case, it is not out of the question. Like I gave you the insane, ooh, that's going to be tough to get 3 in, but I can see how you got there. How about 2? Way better odds to get 2. We just need 2 squads in the Big 12 championship game, sitting at 11 wins. And that then gives you a shot at having multiple schools in the college football playoff. We're not going to be treated fairly compared to the SEC or the Big 10. We're not. We're going to need those schools to have 11 wins. But that is very possible. And I don't think it's that far out of the question. Sometimes you just got to believe. I'm not crazy, right? Coming up, Texas Tech might be good. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go when I say, Iowa State this week against Baylor is favored by 13.5. I do think the Cyclones are going to run away with this and win by 17 points. I can bet on that at FanDuel. And NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200. That's right. Yeah. I'll give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. $200 in bonus bets after your first $5 bet at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com to take Iowa State. Put $5 on it to beat Baylor this week. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit them today. What if Texas Tech is actually really good at football and they were just trying to kind of hide it from all of us? I had a Texas Tech fan recently. I don't read the comments on YouTube that often because typically they can be occasionally odd. I have a mother, my mom, who will read them because she reads everything that any of you send, and she will send me the ones that need responses or deserve some sort of look, the ones that aren't mean. And this week, I got one from a Texas Tech fan that said, you know what, you talked more about Cincinnati in the Tech win against the Bearcats than you did about the Red Raiders. And I thought, oh, wow, I did do that. And that's probably not a good thing. Now, I have looked at the analytics. I have looked at the remaining schedule. I've even looked at Baron Morton, who has 14 touchdown passes, 1,400 yards passing this season. And you know what I have deduced after seeing all of those things? Texas Tech might be good at football again. While we all were sitting here counting them out, oh, that's it. Well, there goes Tech. What if they're actually good? They are one of the most balanced teams offensively in the country. 15th in the nation running the football. EPA rush per collegefootballinsiders.com. 35th in the country EPA dropback. That's good. that's balanced. If I want longevity, if I want a team to be good long-term, to represent the Big 12 on a much larger scale nationally because they can win games out of conference in the postseason, I want a good rushing attack. Hello, Taj Brooks. 35th EPA dropback is not bad. When I tell you that your rushing offense is what really carries you, and then I tell you your quarterback has 14 touchdowns, 1,400 yards so far, you go, yeah, that's probably pretty good. And you know, as much as I know, Noah Fafita, pretty good quarterback. Ted McMillan, pretty good wide receiver. Baron Morton, Josh Kelly, have been better statistically, one extra game, but better enough for me to say we're not that far off from Kelly and Morton being comparable to McMillan and Fafita. Josh Kelly has 10 more receptions than Ted McMillan. Yeah, one more game, but 10 more receptions? Oh, yeah, Baron Morton? Yeah, he's got 1,400 yards to Noah Fafita's 1,000. Uh-oh. Twice as many touchdowns? 14 to Fafita's 7. And we've talked so much about how good Arizona is. They just beat Utah. And Texas Tech somehow statistically, analytically, is better. Better than the Arizona running the football. Maybe not better passing. I wouldn't say that. But defensively, let me give you this. Let me give you this offensively first for Texas Tech. Here's why I think they can contend. So I told you the rushing offense, 15th in the country. That's good. Passing offense, 35th in the country. We're kind of even there. How about on third and fourth down offensively? 16th in the nation. 50% combined on third and fourth down. How do you say good? Because that's exactly what it is. Offensively, overall, EPA margin, 28th in the nation. 14th defensively, offensive success rate on the rush, 30th. Like that, there are some very good analytics for Texas Tech. Again, these coming from collegefootballinsiders.com. Defensively for Tech, and I want to mention that Arizona as well, 72nd nationally defensively against third and fourth down. So if Tech is 16th, Arizona is 72nd. One of those is a lot better than the other. The offense of Arizona is a lot better than the defense. The offense of Texas Tech is a lot better than the defense of Arizona on third and fourth down. That bodes well for you this week, and you're going to have to win this week to continue to prove that you could be a contender late. Defensively, 22nd against the EPA rush. 17th EPA against the drop back. Uh-oh. Those aren't terrible. Now, you're 114th in field position, meaning that oftentimes your special teams or your offense put you in kind of a tough spot. You typically don't have a very good, the opposing offense is getting a bit of a head start against you. That's not great, but it also isn't an entire indictment on your defense. And then your third and fourth down success, you're 109th in the country defensively against third and fourth down. That's Tech's problem. They can't get off the field on late downs. But based on everything I just told you, this isn't me. I don't make these numbers. I'm not the one punching the computer here. I'm not the one that's telling it, make Texas Tech look good. No. This is just the way that analytically Texas Tech shakes out, and it's good. And now the Red Raiders are a legitimate team in the Big 12 that we should all be a little bit worried about, because once you fix that third and fourth down success rate, or lack thereof defensively, you've got a really solid team analytically. And your schedule coming up? Arizona on the road. They're playing an 11 a.m. game. This is not good for anybody involved. It's the early game at Arizona. They're going to be out of sync, out of whack, playing that early. Oh, I lied. 11 p.m. Sometimes it helps to read. 11 p.m. Eastern. So maybe you'll be out of... Oh, that's golden. Maybe you'll be out of whack and out of sync this weekend at Arizona. Hopefully not. The analytics say that you won't. That's tough. You got to battle that. But we just saw Arizona a couple weeks ago got drilled by Kansas State. I still don't trust the Wildcats altogether. Texas Tech has a legitimate shot. And if this becomes a shootout, I don't mind Texas Tech's chances. If you win this game 52-49, you won it. And there's a very good chance that's what this game becomes. Then Baylor, TCU, you're favored in both of those games. You have one ranked game left on your schedule. That game at Oklahoma State doesn't look near as bad as it once did, does it? They have Alan Bowman at quarterback. You remember him. West Virginia at the end of the year, that doesn't look near as bad as it did. I really thought the Arizona game would be a lot worse. I thought the TCU game would be a lot worse. I knew Iowa State would probably be hard. Colorado is going to be a little bit tougher than expected. Oklahoma State and West Virginia have both underperformed. The rest of your schedule isn't that bad. One top 25 team. You could have picked BYU, Kansas State, and Iowa State. If you had all three of those teams left, and Utah, if you had four of those teams left, I'm going, Texas Tech, I don't know. I'm sorry. Ooh, maybe. But it's not the case. What if, against all odds, and I get it, I know, 3 weeks ago, you were all begging me to put Texas Tech at the very bottom of my power rankings in the Big 12. You allowed 51 points to Abilene Christian. You got shellacked at Washington State, who got shellacked by Boise State 37-16. But then something clicks against North Texas. You win 66-21. Then against Arizona State, you gut out a win. Cincinnati, you gut out a win. The graph of did you really win by that much would show that, hey, those were toss-up, coin flip, kind of fluky, late game. You had to close it out, finish it out, and go win. But you did. You have something that a Baylor doesn't have. Baylor's in a lot of games. They can't close. They can't win. They don't know how to win. Texas Tech knows how to win. They're 4-1. And if you win this week at 5-1 with Baylor in Lubbock coming up, yeah. Uh-oh. Tell your wife, tell your kids, tell everybody else, Texas Tech might just be coming. There's a world in which Texas Tech is coming. And it could be this world. Maybe I like Texas Tech. I don't know. I saw the comment. The guy was like, hey, you should give Texas Tech more love. And I was like, whatever. He's right. They're winning now. 4-1. This has been It Always Will Be. Come back tomorrow. I really hope I don't have power still. Thanks to Jesse and Emily Cole of the Savannah Bananas for giving me AC to do this show. Yay. Coming up tomorrow, if I have power, JT Westerso of Locked On Utes. On Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.